Good evening. Tonight we're dissecting a speech that reverberated across the globe. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stood before the U.S. Congress, a leader facing intense scrutiny over the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Netanyahu's address came at a pivotal moment. International pressure on Israel was mounting. Against this backdrop of escalating tensions, Netanyahu took to the podium, determined to present his case directly to the American people and their representatives. His speech laid out the justifications for Israel's military operation in Gaza. He painted a picture of Israel as a nation defending itself against an implacable enemy, forced to take drastic measures to protect its citizens. Netanyahu's narrative centered around the actions of Hamas, the militant group that controls Gaza. He characterized Hamas as a terrorist organization, accusing them of using Palestinian civilians as human shields. The Prime Minister argued that Israel had no other option but to launch a ground offensive in Gaza, a move that drew widespread international condemnation. He insisted that Israel was taking extraordinary measures to minimize civilian casualties, going so far as to drop leaflets warning residents of impending airstrikes. Netanyahu's speech was not without its critics. Human rights groups accused Israel of using disproportionate force in Gaza, pointing to the high number of civilian casualties as evidence. Netanyahu did not shy away from addressing the wave of global protests that had erupted in response to the escalating violence in Gaza. He condemned the demonstrations, labeling them as fueled by anti-Semitism and a fundamental misunderstanding of the conflict. The Prime Minister's words struck a chord with some, particularly within Israel, where public support for the military operation remained high. His supporters saw his speech as a powerful defense of Israel's right to defend itself. However, Netanyahu's comments also drew sharp rebukes from those who saw them as dismissive of legitimate concerns about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Critics argued that his attempts to paint all opposition to Israel's actions as anti-Semitic were disingenuous and designed to silence legitimate criticism. Section 4. Decades of Discord, a brief historical overview. To truly understand the complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we need to step back and consider the historical context. For decades, these two peoples have been locked in a bitter struggle for land and self-determination. The establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, while a momentous occasion for the Jewish people, resulted in the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. This event, known as the Nakba, or catastrophe, continues to cast a long shadow over the region. Subsequent wars and failed peace negotiations have only deepened the divides. Since 1967, Israel has established settlements in the West Bank, territory that Palestinians claim for a future state. The ongoing expansion of settlements is a major point of contention, hindering efforts to achieve a two-state solution. Section 5. A divided world reacts. The aftermath of the speech. Netanyahu's speech to Congress, while powerful and emotive, did little to bridge the deep divides over the Gaza conflict. Instead, it seemed to further entrench existing positions, with supporters praising his resolute defense of Israel and critics condemning his rhetoric as inflammatory and dismissive of Palestinian suffering. The speech sparked intense debate in the United States, reflecting the country's own complex relationship with Israel. While Israel enjoys strong bipartisan support in Congress, public opinion is more nuanced, with growing concern about the humanitarian impact of the conflict. Calls for a ceasefire grew louder, but a lasting solution seemed as elusive as ever.